Hey guys, welcome back to the Win Crew podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Price, and again with me, Alex Mccubbin.
Yes, sir.
Thanks so much for being here, Alex. We've taken a couple of weeks off to kind of recharge the batteries. We were happy to have Emily Davis on our last podcast, kind of talking about how to build and scale your real estate business.
Absolutely.
So if you haven't checked that out, make sure you do so. You can find us basically any of your favorite social channels at the Win Crew Homes. We'd love for you to like and subscribe to those, but today, let's get into it. We're going to talk about the art of negotiation in real estate. And Alex, you've done triple digits of closings in your real estate career. So yeah. I'm so happy to have your voice and your knowledge and your expertise that we can share with the listeners.
Yeah, man, I'm excited to talk about it.
Absolutely. So let's just kind of start off, just kind of like the mindset required to to excel in negotiations, especially in the real estate. Like how do you get your mind ready, prepare for these?
Sure. That's a great place to start. I do think, understanding and managing your emotions is a huge piece of negotiations because you have to know where you're at. You have to understand the needs and wants of your customer as well. But, I think if you broke it down to 3 traits, you've got to have confidence. You got to be able to walk with your chest held high, believe in yourself, believe in your product, believe in your services to be able to have those negotiations. You've got to show some empathy for what your buyer, seller, client, whatever the case is, what their needs are as well. You have to understand that. And then you have to be adaptable. If you come in negotiations thinking there's only one way to win, you're probably not going to have a whole lot of wins on your report card. But having that adaptable mindset, getting into various negotiation skills, various negotiation scenes with an open mind will certainly help you be able to win for yourself and for your clients.
Yeah. And that's what it is. We're representing our clients in these negotiations. We'll get into that a little bit deeper shortly, but it is a little different in real estate because you are speaking on behalf and working on behalf of someone else through someone else to get to someone else, right?
I know, yeah.
But we'll get into that. I don't want to jump the gun yet.
I gotcha.
Like I mentioned, you've done so many transactions in your real estate career. Give me like a real life scenario of how you really had to sit down, get your mind right, maybe how you researched before you even entered the negotiation process.
Yeah. I think with every deal that gets to a closing table, there's some sort of negotiations through that, whether you're sitting at a kitchen table talking about listing a house and going over your listing commissions, the services that you provide, what the prices are going to be with the co-op agent, so forth and so on. I think the most common one, I just had this a couple of weeks ago. I had a listing. It was priced well. We did the CMA on it. We priced it pretty aggressively to sell it quick. We got a full price offer on it. Everything was great. Going through escrow, we get to the home inspection process, and the buyers had asked for $2,000 in repair request. And my sellers just didn't want to budge on the price. They didn't want to come down any. They wanted to give any concessions. And so I had to show empathy. I had to get on their page. I had to understand why that was the case. And really, I just showed them stats on why it would be in their best interest to have some type of negotiations there to get to a closing table. I know one of the things we talk about a lot is the TMO, the total market overview. And so I simply just showed them, hey, typically you're only getting about 97% of your home's value list to sale ratio. You got full price. Having this $2,000 of a concession actually still puts you ahead of the game. And so once I got on their page, we had some conversations. It was able to be reached to a finish line, which is good for everyone because we all won. But man, I've talked people into deals. I've talked people out of deals. There's times where I'm negotiating kind of against myself in favor of the client because it's not their best interest to buy right now or to sell right now. And so, there's a ton of stories. I'm sure we could, dissect that. But the most common one is probably what I just talked about. And it happened to me, like I said, about 2 weeks ago where we had to negotiate. I had to negotiate with the seller first and then to the co-op agent to get everyone on the same page.
Yep. So last week, I kind of did the same thing you mentioned, kind of negotiated against myself. So quick story.
Yeah,
so,
I love it.
So I sold a home to this beautiful couple, just had a baby, and he wants her to stay at home with the kid. Sure. So they're going to be going down to one income.
Right.
So he's like, Ryan, I know we haven't been in this house 2 years. It's only been really, about 18 months. But we really need to downsize. Like I want her to stay at home with the kid. We've got to lower our monthly payment.
Okay. Yeah.
I said, okay, let's hop on a call. Let's meet. Let's go over some strategies.
Right.
So what we found is, even if they can afford a $200,000 home right now, what they locked in interest rate rise for their, much larger home that they're living in right now, there was zero chance of them lowering their monthly payments.
Yeah.
So again, working on behalf of my client, it didn't get me to a closing table,
Right.
but I had already had that developed relationship and continue to build rapport because I want what's in their best interest.
Sure.
So when you sit down with these people in your story and you're going over, we need to do this 2K allowance to make this worth it.
Sure.
Obviously, you had to build rapport with them.
Yeah.
So they took, your word
right.
as a professional, and, tell me how you build that trust up, and what the listeners can do to better do that.
Well, you have to actively listen. And I think a lot of people passively listen, and you might catch a couple things here and a couple things there. But if you actively listen, that's going to show them that you care about them. And honestly, that's over half the battle. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I show these people that I really cared about them. And, one of the people that I really look up to and their teams is Jeff Glover. And he has a Gloverism is what it's called. But the moment you make this about a commission check is the moment you lose. So, man, hats off to you for not making that about a commission check, because you could have easily listed that house, put these people in another house. That's 2 closings for you, and then they're worse off. I think that little things like that go a long way, and they respect that out of you as their agent. And, same thing with the sellers I was talking about. I just had a heart-to-heart conversation with them. I was being very transparent and honest with them, and I let them know that if they didn't move forward with this simple $2,000 allowance, I know $2,000 is a lot of money, but in the big scheme of things, it could set them back. We could have negotiations. We could have another $2,000 allowance on top of a lower price maybe in the future if we got another offer. And, once you paint that picture and you show them that you care about them, I think it goes a long way. And like you said, it builds that rapport to where they can trust you, they can take your advice, and they can move forward.
Yep. I always say if you get into this industry, chasing a dollar, then you're going to fail.
Short-lived.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, if you really care about who you're working with or who you could work with in the future, those are the people that are always going to rise to the top.
For sure.
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
You talked about adaptability when we first got going. So talk about how important that is, being adaptable, being flexible as you're going through negotiations on behalf of your clients.
Yeah, I think that's some of the key principles. You have to be adaptable, not only with the co-op agent, you have to be adaptable with your techniques inside yourself. You have to be adaptable with the person that you're representing on the other side of it. But like I said, if all you do is think that there's one way to skin a cat, you're probably not going to have too much success inside of real estate or sales in general. You have to maintain that professionalism and that honesty as well. The minute you get caught in a lie is the minute all trust goes out the window. And so you might be representing a sale, and you might try and tweak the things that you're saying just to get an advantage on the other person. Well, somebody's going to find out about that, and now you've ruined your reputation, specifically with that client, and it could be even more damaging when it comes to word of mouth. And so always doing the right thing, man. I tell my kids that all the time. It never hurts to do the right thing, and that's also true in negotiations. Just be transparent and be honest with each other, and always look for, I think this is the third principle, is look for win-win situations. If you go into it thinking you have to compromise, you're probably somebody's going to lose, right? And the more that we can have wins for everybody, the better everyone's going to feel, the quicker you're probably going to get to a finish line, and you're going to be able to, have something that's rewarding, that you work for, that just, you just have a feeling of accomplishment for it. So, focus on creative solutions that address the interests and concerns for both parties. And then that way everyone feels like they're winning versus someone just feeling like they have to give up or give in to be able to get the deal done.
Yeah. In real estate, do you feel like you're negotiating with your client or are you negotiating with the other side's representation? There has to be, I think there's a little bit of both, but explain the differences in those.
Yeah. So yes, both. And it is a little different because in traditional negotiations, there's a book we're talking about here in a little bit, but there's an FBI agent who negotiates with bank robbers. So that's direct one-on-one negotiations. If I'm representing you in a sale, you and I have to be on the same page in order for me to be on the same page with a co-op agent that then represents their buyer. And so there's a big domino effect here. And if one of us is off track and we're not being transparent and honest with each other or telling each other what we really need and want out of something, well, when that information gets communicated to somebody else, it's just like that thing you did in elementary school. You tell somebody a secret in a circle, you go all the way around, and it completely loses its origin. But I think it's hard because you have to make sure that you represent everybody on the same page at all times. The toughest part is, though, when the baton is handed off hand it off to the co-op agent, I have to trust that everything that I communicate to them is then communicated to the buyer or the seller, communicated back to me, back to you. But going back to that professional and the honesty, that is important when you're representing a client, but it's also super and uber important inside of our field. If you have a reputation of being a professional agent, an honest agent, a transparent agent, when somebody comes to you and brings you a deal and you rebuttal with some type of negotiations, they're going to respect that and take you a lot more seriously than if you were to just, lie here and there to get what's best for your client.
Yeah.
And so, that's a great point. That's a big struggle inside of real estate, but it's also compounds the importance of being professional, honest, and transparent.
Yeah. So like for me, I like to have a paper trail.
Okay.
So I think it's always important, have either face-to-face conversations or phone conversations, but I'll always follow those up maybe with a text message or kind of a debrief of what we talked about.
I love it.
How do you feel about maybe following up with a conversation, like with an email to kind of outline what was said? So if maybe you're working with someone that's a little less honest than you are, then at least you have that in your back pocket, so you can say, hey, this is what we talked about.
Yeah. Man, communication is so important. And I think if all you do is resort to an email or a text, you're probably not going to be as good of a negotiator if you could have it face-to-face. Face-to-face is obviously the best. There's a UCLA professor who did a study. 7% of communication is done by the words that you speak. 38% is by the tone in which you speak them. And the other 55% is the body language. So if you and I are negotiating and all I do is do it through text message, I'm probably not going to have a big chance on being able to move the needle. However, I do agree with everything that you're saying in terms of having that paper trail. So if you and I have a conversation, best case, face-to-face, second best case, we're having it over the phone, last resort is through an email. You and I have that conversation. I follow up with a text to have that paper trail. I follow up with the email to have that paper trail. That way you can have transparency with your seller or your buyer, whoever you're representing as well.
Yeah,
great point.
That's awesome. So you talked about, you were getting ready to get into it, some books. Yeah. So talk about a book or two, maybe some resources or people you follow that have really influenced that mindset of getting into negotiation mode or representing my buyer or seller in, the best way I can mode.
Sure. Never Split the Difference. It's a phenomenal book. It's probably, I'd say, one of the best negotiation books out there. This was the FBI agent I was talking about. And so think about the complexity of the things that he's negotiating. We're talking about negotiating a contract for a real estate purchase. He's negotiating people jumping off of bridges, robbing banks, criminals, and things like that. So that's a phenomenal book. Spin Selling is also a great book that you can get. It's going to help you kind of get brushed up on your negotiation skills, how to represent your clients, and then the Psychology of Persuasion. I know negotiation and persuasion aren't exactly the same, but having good persuasion skills definitely helps with negotiations. And then, man, like finding mentors, finding colleagues, doesn't have to be necessarily in our field, but finding people that are in sales that use tactics and techniques, always leaning into them to kind of sharpen your axe. And then, YouTube.
Yeah.
You can literally just go to YouTube right now and type in Negotiation Skills 101 or The Art of Negotiations or Never Split the Difference Summary. And you can get a compound list of things that are going to help you be able to use to your advantage to be able to represent your clients better.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's good advice. We always talked about, adapting with the market. It's ever changing.
Right.
So as markets continue to fluctuate, they continue to change, like how can our negotiation tactics, how do they need to change with the market?
Yeah, that's a great point, man. We're really starting to see a lot of artificial intelligence, being tech savvy, using that to your advantage, staying up to par on what's going on in the market. How can you use those tools to help you get your education where it needs to be? But all that stuff compiled, it's always going to be ever evolving. And so if you're still negotiating the way you did back in the 90s or early 2000s, it's probably not tactics and techniques that are used anymore. I'm sure there's principles of that you can use, but as times change, you need to make sure that you are also adapting with that, to stay with the current trends.
Yep. So name a couple of things that we're going to do, things to avoid first, and then things that we have to do in negotiation. So name a couple of things that are just going to put you in the ground.
Yep.
You got to avoid these during negotiations in real estate.
I think one of the biggest things is fear of rejection. I think that probably hinders a lot of people from negotiating because they don't want to get rejected. They don't want to be told no. They don't want to have to go back to their client and say, hey, I couldn't get the deal done for you. So fear of rejection is huge. The fear of losing the deal is also big too, because I think when you go back to your client and you tell them you didn't get the negotiation that they wanted, you fear that you might lose the deal. But keep in mind, no deal is better than a bad deal. That's actually in the book, Never Split the Difference. But no deal is better than a bad deal. If you think about that, if I represent my clients and I get them the deal, but it's a bad deal, that's a reflection of me. They're probably not going to use me anymore. I'm definitely not going to get repeat business. Probably not going to get good word of mouth. So understand that you're not going to win everything. That's one of the biggest things that I personally had to kind of cope with and come to terms with was when I negotiated, I always had that mindset that we were going to win that battle. But long term, I had to train myself. This is the third thing. Stop thinking so short term. If I don't win this deal, if I don't win this negotiation, hopefully I can continue to work with this client and we can have some long-term wins together. But get rid of the fear, get rid of the worry of losing the deal, and be more focused on the long-term results and benefits versus these short-term wins. We've talked about it before on the podcast. We're so microwave driven. Everyone wants instant results, instant gratification. But it's okay to have that crock pot mentality every once in a while, especially with building rapport, building relationships, because we want those to be long-lasting. Some of the things to do, you said to hopefully have some success or positive, when you do lose, have some self-reflection, visualization. Think about the times that you've had success, kind of ride your horse on that and know that you know how to negotiate, keep your confidence high, and just, be a good person, represent your client in their best interest, do whatever you can at the negotiation tables to get the job done, and know that you gave it your best effort. And at the end of the day, we can study, we can use techniques, we can do all this type of stuff. But if you can do that and represent your client to the fullest ability that you have, you can sleep good at night.
Yeah, absolutely. Somebody that's just getting into, you mentioned confidence a little earlier. Mm-hmm. Somebody that's new to the industry, everyone's lacking knowledge, but they're really lacking knowledge. They don't really have that confidence. What can people do to kind of gain that confidence? So maybe that first transaction, when there are negotiations to be had, like how can they go into that without experience and still have confidence?
Man, the quickest answer for me right now is find a mentor. I know we do that here on the Win Crew, but if I'm putting into a position where it's foreign to me, one of my first things to do is just freeze up, and I've got to be able to lean into somebody that's going to help coach me. No sense in recreating the wheel. Everybody in real estate, if you've done a transaction, you've been exposed to negotiations. So if you're new, trying to find that confidence, find somebody that's been in the game for a little while, and has a couple of contracts underneath their belt, and has the confidence and maybe the education that they can then teach that person to speak confidently. But don't feel like you have to do it alone. There's all kinds of people. It doesn't have to be on a team, but man, you can reach out to other colleagues, like I said, inside of the real estate world. You can reach out to sales professionals. You can do research on YouTube, continuing education. Knowledge is power. And I think the biggest problem with new people is they just don't have that education. They don't have that knowledge, so they don't speak confidently and they don't walk tall like I was talking about earlier. But the quicker you can find somebody to pour into you to help you with this type of stuff, the quicker you're going to be able to speak on it confidently and get the deals done.
Yep. Awesome advice, Alex. Thanks so much for everything today.
Yeah.
Next time on the Win Crew podcast, we'll be going over like investments in real estate, kind of how to set yourself up for that. You have some investment properties. I'm new to the game, but I'm really looking forward to talking about that on the next one. So like, subscribe, follow on your favorite social platforms at the Win Crew Homes. We'd love to see you back here next time. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Ron.